On an icy London night in 1989, a young actor named Graham Norton had a fateful encounter that forever changed the trajectory of his life and career. Brutally stabbed by a gang of muggers and left for dead, Norton narrowly escaped becoming another tragic crime statistic. Join FactsVerse as we delve into the tragic yet inspiring tale of how Graham Norton survived a near-fatal stabbing and turned trauma into triumph on his path to stardom. A fateful night in London. In 1989, a young Graham Norton had moved to London to attend the prestigious Central School of Speech and Drama to pursue his acting dreams. To support himself financially, he worked evenings as a waiter around his studies and auditions. Though shy and working class, Norton was determined to break into the entertainment industry. One winter night after a tiring restaurant shift, Norton hurried to catch the tube home. As he walked alone down a dim side street, feeling burdened by exhaustion, he heard a menacing voice instructing him to surrender his bag. Turning around, he noticed 3 shadowy figures, one of whom was wielding a knife. Overwhelmed with disbelief, he momentarily froze. He tried to flee, but the muggers forcibly grabbed his coat, restraining him. He pleaded with them to take his bag without causing him harm. But the knife-wielding attacker grew enraged, plunging his blade violently into Norton's abdomen. The muggers fled with Norton's meager possessions, leaving him collapsed on the pavement, blood pooling beneath his body. Fighting to remain conscious, he cried for help, but there was no one around. By chance, an elderly couple soon spotted Norton's crumbled form and called emergency services, ultimately saving the young actor's life. Fighting for his life. When paramedics arrived, Norton was unconscious and barely clinging to life. He had already lost over half the blood in his body from the singular knife wound pierced deep into his stomach. He was raced to the emergency room and straight into intensive, life-saving surgery. As doctors worked through the night to resuscitate the dying patient, they discovered additional internal lacerations caused by the violent knife attack. His remaining blood supply was severely depleted, requiring massive transfusions during the painstaking operation to repair his ravaged organs. Touch and go was an understatement. Norton flatlined twice on the operating table as surgeons battled internal bleeding that would not stop. But the emergency medical team somehow managed to stabilize the battered Norton after hours of intense, uncertain surgery. He remained comatose for 2 days as his body began the process of healing. Doctors feared he could suffer permanent organ damage or infection, continually monitoring for secondary complications in the ICU. But eventually, against the odds, Norton emerged from the coma, disoriented but miraculously alive. The road to recovery was long and excruciating for Norton, physically and mentally. He required another major procedure to fully repair internal lacerations. For weeks, he struggled to recuperate from the extreme blood loss and trauma inflicted on his previously healthy body. Bedridden and alone with his anguish in the stark hospital room, Norton grappled with the lingering terror and despair triggered by the near-fatal attack. Though thankful to be alive, he wondered whether the long rehabilitation required could ever restore his spirit to pursue acting again. After a month-long hospitalization and grueling convalescence, Norton was discharged. The brush with mortality left an indelible mark that forever altered his perspective and purpose. Dealing with the trauma. In the months after the assault, Norton dutifully attended follow-up medical appointments. Though his body gradually mended, the emotional trauma permeated deeper. Plagued by crippling anxiety whenever he ventured outside alone, Norton found himself virtually imprisoned in his modest apartment. Brief flashbacks ignited panic attacks. Walking London streets once filled Norton with the vibrancy of promise. Now those same sidewalks were menacing sites of recalled terror. Rigorous psychotherapy was soon added to his recovery as acute PTSD took root. However, Norton found an unlikely treatment method while attending acting classes again. Immersing himself in challenging character roles proved cathartic. Though simulations of emotional extremity frequently triggered painful flashbacks at first, he leaned in to harness that energy into his performances. Norton was struck by the stark dichotomy of freezing during an on-set scene requiring displaying anguish, where performing trauma had flowed freely before. The facade of fiction paralyzed him. This puzzling experience motivated him to commit fully to acting. Gradually, through reflection via therapeutic writing, he realized that the horrific experience provided him perspective that powerfully informed his work. By consciously reframing the lasting imprint of trauma into an emotional touchstone, Norton discovered inspiration where there had only been pain. While still struggling with residual effects, for the first time since that disastrous winter night, flickers of his characteristic spark returned. Brushes with death. The knife attack was not Norton's first dangerously close brush with mortality, though it left the most permanent damage. When interviewers inquire about the visible scar on his abdomen, it often prompts Norton to reflect on other near-death experiences. In his early 20s, he traveled alone to San Francisco, rebelling against the conformity of Irish culture for artistic freedom. There, he ensconced himself amongst the city's vibrant counterculture scene, but also discovered copious amounts of cheap liquor and party drugs. He admits he quickly spiraled into full-blown alcoholism and addiction, spending several years in a drug and drink-fueled haze. Bloated and jaundiced, he routinely drank himself into a blackout, once awakening to discover he had tried to hitchhike to Mexico with no recollection of the events. Bottoming out the morning a major Hollywood audition had to be scrapped due to his inebriation, he knew death hovered disturbingly close. The stab wounds years later echoed the terrifying fragility of mortality he learned in San Francisco's underbelly. Both profound brushes with death transformed Norton's very connotations of existence. He emerged wiser and refocused, destined to eventually claim fame on the same London stages that almost slipped away one winter's eve. Surviving and thriving. In the years following his gruesome stabbing, the once struggling actor climbed to phenomenal fame on the London entertainment scene and beyond. Just a decade after the murder attempt that forever marked his body and spirit, he was helming his own popular talk shows and earning acclaim on the West End stage. Though he understandably retreated from public life to privately process his trauma initially, the relentless calling to perform eventually summoned his return. Early stand-up comedy sets incorporated dark humor referencing his dramatic brush with death, and audiences quickly gravitated to this newcomer speaking so frankly about life's fragility. Before long, his name was plastered across theater marquees as his uniquely witty yet philosophical perspectives on existence won widespread appeal. The Graham Norton Show cemented the Cork native's reputation for effortlessly blending laugh-out-loud showbiz tales with nuanced takes on current events. Now entering his fourth decade in the media spotlight, Norton shows no signs of slowing down either on camera or through branching creative pursuits like fiction writing and memoir. Now it's time to hear from you. How does knowing Norton's origin story change the way you see him? Let us know in the comments section below.